So that's a 9-iron there, little chip and run shot here. Let me try one more. There's a little more on target there. These shots could be played really with anything, say from a, well, it could be anything, but let's say certainly 7-iron to pitching wedge would be common. They're primarily shots that roll. And they do take quite a bit of practice because you have to, not only do you have to hit the ball solidly, but you have to control distance. On a full shot, basically the club selection controls distance, not to 100%, but basically, but on these buggers you have to control distance. You have to have some sort of sense of feel for the speed of the green and all those things, and that takes practice. But I'll tell you, you will not develop, let me try one more shot here. You will not develop good distance control until you have pretty consistently solid contact. So the first key to making solid contact and being a good chipper really is the setup. And the fact of the matter is, I mean, it depends on the shot certainly, but most of these shots are only played within a stroke length of about this, and the smaller the stroke, the less movement, not just movement in the club, but the less dynamic movement you can create in your body, the more you have to get your address position to match what you want to be at impact. You'd see that in other sports. Baseball, maybe you get your bunt, if it's only a small stroke, you kind of get in your impact position. Tennis at the net or whatever. If you're going to be an effective chipper, you don't need to be moving a lot to hit the ball. So I'm going to go ahead and feel with my chipping setup like I'm literally at an impact position at address. Weights forward, that puts the shaft of the club a little bit more forward there. And when you can do that, it's very easy to return to the proper impact position. Bottom out point, where the club reaches its low point and starts out, is just critical to this. We don't have to really trap the ball and take a divot, but we still want the bottom out point pretty far forward. And again, you're just not going to be able to move that well. So here's a little drill I would do to check this. Get your setup, get the kind of position you think would mimic it, and just drop a ball from your shirt buttons. You can see that dropped probably an inch or two in front of where the golf ball was. Unfortunately, in this world, that doesn't guarantee that's where the bottom of the swing is going to be, but it's a pretty good indicator. So if I can get in that kind of position, get my body set, it's not too difficult to return there and get the bottom of the swing right where I want it there. And I can do it with pretty good consistency and pretty repetitively. One other small thing you may have noticed me doing there, my feet are very close together. As we said in one of the other videos in this series about the setup and posture, the wider your stance is, the more stable you are. I don't really need stability for a shot like this. The more together your feet are, the more mobile you are. And I want to have a little bit of movement in the shot just to help me make solid contact in the forward direction. So a nice narrow stance. And preferably, I would say, a stance where your toes are turned in a little bit. That sets the knees and the ankles a bit. And again, just kind of fosters this sense that we're in our impact position at address. To me, that's it. I feel like my chest is forward. And a nice solid hit there. So one more tip I'd have for you, shorten up on the golf club, at least mid-handle. You can decide for yourself what's the right amount. By making the club shorter, you always make it easier for solid contact. You lose distance, but that doesn't really matter from this range. One other byproduct, when I shorten the club, I can get closer to the ball, and that helps the swing stay straighter. The further you get from the ball, the rounder your swing gets. Good for power, not for accuracy. So shorten up on the golf club, get fairly close to it, and it'll help your accuracy. It's another way to help you hit it solidly. So hopefully we're set up and in good shape. Let's talk a little bit about the stroke itself now. Obviously it's much more simple because it's so small there. The principle really though is the more stable the shaft is, the more repetitive you are and the better distance control you have. If you create a lot of activity or movement, your odds of hitting it solidly and of having a repetitive type of stroke where you can control distance, not so good. So that means I've got to use more the big muscles, the muscles of the trunk, and not so much the muscles of the hands and arms. That's probably the main thing I see with really poor chippers, is too much stabbing at the ball. Club's too active, they're not enough active. So I'm going to get that feeling that it's a nice little pendulum movement. The genesis of the movement is my body, and I can pretty much control the shaft there. Hey, listen, it's going to float and hinge a little bit. It's going to have a little softness and movement. We're not trying to be stiff with this, but basically it's stable and the trunk is creating the energy. Let's try one here. Again, shaft nice and stable. You watch how many times you see poor chippers. Hopefully this isn't you. Clubs all over the place at the finish. You watch the guys on TV, clubs right in front of them. So a stable club shaft, a nice simple setup, get your address position built into your setup, get that rhythm, and you're going to become a pretty good chipper. At Scratch Golf Academy, again in the Master Collection, a whole series on chipping, handling different lies, club selection, awkward lies, strategies, much more about the stroke, etc. Hope you'll check that out. Hopefully this gives you some ideas that'll be helpful.